Welcome back, guys, to Wrong Turn Horror. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 unsettling Halloween horror stories from abandoned towns. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so you never miss a new horror story. Tonight, I want you to imagine, what if you decided to explore one of those silent, forgotten places this Halloween? What if the ghosts of the past were still waiting there for you? Now, dim the lights and let's begin. It started as a dare. 3 college friends, Eli Carter, Jordan Lee, and Brooke Dawson, had grown up together in the small city of Wexford, Ohio. They were inseparable until life started pulling them in different directions. Eli was studying film, Jordan was a thrill seeker with a YouTube channel, and Brooke, she just wanted something exciting to break the routine. It was the night before Halloween, 1997, when Jordan leaned across the diner booth and said, "Let's spend Halloween night in Harper's Rest." Brooke frowned. "That ghost town? The one that blew up in the 50s? "Exactly," Jordan grinned. "People say you can still see porch lights flicker out there every Halloween. Like the town's still alive." Eli shook his head. "You're kidding. The gas explosion killed 30 miners and their families. There's nothing left." Jordan smirked. "Then prove it." And that was it. The spark. The foolish challenge none of them would walk away from. Arrival at Harper's Rest. The next night, their beat-up Chevy crawled down a road that didn't even show up on modern maps. The forest thickened, branches arching overhead like black veins. A faded sign appeared in the mist. "Welcome to Harper's Rest, EST 1889. Below it, someone had spray-painted a single word, "Stay." Fog rolled in heavy, swallowing the headlights. When the car finally emerged from the trees, they found themselves on a cracked main street lined with crumbling buildings. Old storefronts leaned against each other like exhausted corpses. Windows were shattered, roofs half collapsed. But then Brooke gasped. "Look," she whispered. On every porch, a pumpkin sat glowing faintly. Each one carved differently, smiling, frowning, screaming. But when Eli stepped closer, he saw the candles weren't burning. The glow came from something inside the flesh itself, pulsing weakly like a heartbeat. Jordan laughed nervously. "Somebody's messing with us." They parked the car near an old post office and stepped into the chill. The air smelled of rust, damp wood, and something faintly sweet like decaying fruit. The film project. Eli unpacked his camcorder. He wanted to film everything. For him, this was going to be his next short film, Ghost Town Halloween. He focused the lens on a row of houses, the way the fog twisted around the chimneys like smoke from an invisible fire. Brooke wandered ahead, flashlight sweeping through the dark. The silence was heavy. Not even crickets, just the sound of their footsteps echoing through the hollow streets. Jordan clicked his flashlight off and on again. "Do you hear that?" Eli frowned. "Hear what?" "Music." They listened. Somewhere in the distance, faint and tinny, a music box played a slow, warped tune. Brooke's voice trembled. Maybe it's just wind through a pipe or something. But the melody was clear. Pop goes the weasel. The diner. The sound led them to a small diner on the corner, its windows dark, the sign reading Millie's Breakfast and PI. Inside, the air was colder than outside. Tables were still set with cracked plates. Coffee cups half full, like everyone had just gotten up and left. Eli's camera light scanned the counter, and his breath caught. "Guys, look at this." On the far wall hung a calendar frozen on October 31st, 1954. Below it, a handwritten note in red marker. "When the bell rings, stay inside." Jordan laughed nervously. Guess they didn't listen. Then the bell above the diner door jingled. But no one was standing there. Eli swung his flashlight toward the entrance. Nothing. Just the door gently swinging shut. The figures outside. They hurried out of the diner, back into the fog. That's when Jordan stopped dead in his tracks. In the middle of Main Street stood a line of people, maybe 10 of them, frozen in place. Men, women, and children, each one wearing an old-fashioned Halloween mask. A clown, a witch, a scarecrow, a rabbit. Their clothes were from a 1950s, frayed, dirt-caked, but whole. Jordan whispered, "Holy crap, they look so real." Brooke stepped closer. Maybe mannequins? But Eli zoomed in with his camera. The lens caught something horrifying. Tiny movements beneath the skin. A faint twitch. A breath. The scarecrow mask turned. Brooke screamed. They bolted toward the car, gravel crunching underfoot. But when they reached it, the doors were locked. Eli swore he hadn't locked them. The figures from the street were gone. The church bell. Then came the sound. A church bell, deep and slow, echoing through the valley. One toll. 2. 3. Brooke clutched Eli's arm. We need to go. Now. But the fog thickened, swallowing the road. They couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. Jordan fumbled for his keys, but the car wouldn't start. The bell rang again. Eli's camera caught movement through the fog, silhouettes approaching from every direction. Dozens of them, all wearing masks. The return of the town. The first figure reached the car window, a woman in a porcelain mask shaped like a doll's face. Her lips didn't move, but Eli heard a voice inside his head. You shouldn't have come here. The others began to circle the car, tapping on the windows in rhythm with the bell. Tap, tap, tap. Jordan screamed and slammed the horn. Nothing but static came from it. The radio flickered on. A voice crackled through the speaker, old and distant. To those still in Harper's Rest, please, stay indoors. The gas is spreading. Then a loud pop echoed from somewhere behind them. A flash of orange light burst through the fog. The pumpkins. They were exploding, one after another, releasing streams of thick, shimmering gas into the air. Brooke coughed, choking. What is that? What's happening? Eli opened his door to get out, but Jordan grabbed him. Don't. It's gas. But it was too late. The air shimmered around them, distorting like heat waves. Through the haze, Eli saw the figures in masks begin to glow faintly, blue light bleeding through their clothes, their skin. And then everything went dark. When Eli opened his eyes, it was morning. The fog was gone. The car door was open. Jordan and Brooke were missing. He stumbled out onto the cracked road. The town was silent. No pumpkins. No figures. No music. He searched for hours, calling their names until his throat bled. But the only sound that answered was the wind through broken windows. He finally found his camcorder lying near the diner. The battery was dead, but the tape inside was intact. He took it home that night, shaking, covered in dirt and soot. When he played the footage back, it began just like he remembered. Brooke laughing, Jordan joking, the faint music box. But then, something new appeared. At one point in the video, while Eli had been filming the glowing pumpkins, a reflection flashed across a window. It showed the three of them standing together, but behind them, the town was alive. People walking, cars driving, smoke rising from chimneys. A Halloween parade rolling down Main Street. The footage glitched and distorted. Then came a final frame. The three friends standing side by side, smiling blankly, each wearing a mask. Red Hollow used to be a small mining town tucked deep within the Pennsylvania woods. It wasn't on any modern map anymore, just a stretch of crumbling road leading into a valley that locals swore was cursed. The town had been abandoned for over 60 years, but every Halloween night, some people claimed they could still hear a child's voice echoing through the mist, whispering, "Trick or treat." It all started in 1962, when a 7-year-old boy named Tommy Weaver vanished while trick-or-treating. He was last seen wearing a skeleton costume, holding a small orange pail shaped like a pumpkin. He knocked on the last house at the edge of town, a sagging Victorian home with boarded windows and a porch light still glowing faintly in the dark. His friend said the door opened on its own, and Tommy stepped inside, laughing. But he never came back out. The next morning, search teams combed through Red Hollow. They found his candy bag lying in the ditch, soaked from the rain and streaked with something dark, something that wasn't mud. The house where he'd disappeared was empty, rotted from the inside. His parents moved away soon after, and Red Hollow slowly died, house by house, family by family, until there was nothing left but the wind through the hollow streets. But legends have a way of staying behind long after people are gone. By the 1990s, Red Hollow had become a place of dare and superstition, where teenagers from nearby towns would sneak in on Halloween night, hoping to catch a glimpse of the ghostly trick-or-treater. Some said he appeared as a small shadow at the end of the street, holding out a rusted pail and asking for candy in a voice that wasn't quite human. In 2015, a group of teens decided to make Red Hallow their Halloween stunt. Among them was Mason Klein, a 17-year-old obsessed with streaming and going viral. He'd heard the stories from his grandfather and decided this was perfect for content. "I'll talk to the ghost kid," he said with a grin, holding up his phone. "It'll be hilarious." The group reached the edge of Red Hallow just before midnight. The moon was covered in clouds, and fog rolled between the collapsed houses like something alive. Street signs leaned sideways, and trees had grown through the pavement. Yet at the far end of the street, one thing stood out: a single porch light, still glowing faintly. Mason pointed his camera. There it is. The last house. The one Tommy Weaver disappeared in. The others hung back, whispering nervously. But Mason, grinning, started walking toward the house. "What's up, guys?" he said in his phone. "It's Halloween night, and I'm in Red Hallow. Let's see if Tommy's home." As he approached the steps, the camera flickered. Static hissed in the feed. The porch groaned under his weight, and the door, though nailed shut, creaked open an inch, as if something inside was waiting. Mason turned back to the camera. "Guess he's still home," he joked, voice trembling just slightly. Then he heard it, a faint voice, childlike, playful. "Trick or treat." Mason froze. His flashlight beam shook as he aimed it toward the doorway. Standing there was a small boy, his costume tattered, his mask cracked, revealing pale gray skin beneath. The boy held out a rusty metal pail, and his voice came again, quieter this time. "Trick or treat." Mason laughed nervously, thinking one of his friends was pranking him. "Nice one, guys." "Real funny," he shouted, turning the camera toward the dark street behind him. But the street was empty. When he turned back, the boy was standing closer, his head tilted, his hollow eyes staring straight into the light. "Did you bring candy?" the boy whispered. The livestream's comments started flooding in. "What's that thing? Bro, run. Look behind you." Mason turned his camera slightly to the side, and that's when he saw them, more figures emerging from the fog. Children, dozens of them, each wearing old Halloween costumes. Witches, pirates, skeletons, but their faces looked sunken, blackened, like something had drained the life from them. Each one held out a pail or a bag, murmuring in unison, "Trick or treat." Mason's flashlight flickered violently. The screen glitched. He stumbled backward, screaming, dropping his phone as the camera fell to the porch floor. The last thing viewers saw was a swarm of small shadows closing in on him, whispering the same phrase over and over again. The livestream stayed on for 6 more hours. No one moved the camera. The only sound was the creaking of the house and a faint scraping noise, like someone dragging a metal pail along the floor. Then, right before sunrise, the phone screen lit up one final time. The camera lens shifted slightly on its own, as though something had picked it up. A small, gray hand entered the frame, holding a pumpkin-shaped pail. And in a voice that was both distant and distorted, it whispered, "Your turn." The police found Mason's phone a week later. It was sitting on the porch of the Weaver house, covered in dust, battery drained. His friends were never charged. There wasn't any proof of foul play. But every Halloween since then, the live stream reappears online under different usernames, playing the same footage, the same whispers, and always ending with a single chilling line. "Your turn." Locals say if you go to Red Hallow on Halloween night and knock 3 times on the Weaver house door, a child's voice will answer. Some claim he still wants candy. Others say he's looking for someone new to join his endless trick-or-treating. But most people don't test the legend, because those who do never make it out before dawn. So, tell me, if a small child knocked on your door at midnight, face hidden behind a cracked skeleton mask, and whispered, "Trick or treat," would you open the door? Or would you pray he walks past your house this Halloween night? This is Wrong Turn Horror. And remember, some ghosts never stop knocking. They called it Hollow Acre, a wide stretch of farmland just outside of Oak Ridge, Kansas. Once, it had been the pride of the county, owned by a man named Emmett Graves, a stern, quiet farmer who kept mostly to himself. But after the Spanish flu swept through in 1918, the land became cursed. First, Emmett's wife and 2 daughters fell ill. Then his crops withered overnight, the vines turning black and brittle. No one saw him for weeks, until one morning, smoke rose from his chimney again. When the sheriff visited, he found 3 new mounds of soil behind the farmhouse, each marked by a crude wooden cross and hundreds of freshly grown pumpkins covering the entire field. They said Emmett never sold those pumpkins, never ate them. He just sat on his porch every evening, rocking back and forth, watching them grow. And when Halloween came, strange lights began to move between the rows, small, flickering orbs that looked like candle flames. Children claimed they heard whispering coming from the vines, calling their names softly in the dark. Then one morning, Emmett's house was found empty, the front door hanging open, his boots still by the bed. From that day on, Hallow Acre became known as the field that grew without sunlight. For decades, no one touched the land. The soil was said to be cursed, the pumpkins sprouting even in the dead of winter. Hunters passing by at night claimed they saw faces forming in the orange flesh, and some even swore they heard laughter coming from beneath the earth. Locals kept their distance until one Halloween night in 1979, when a woman named Claire Madison, a drifter with nowhere to go, stumbled upon Hallow Acre looking for shelter. She had been hitchhiking for days, her clothes soaked from the rain, her stomach empty. The field appeared out of the fog like a dream. Endless rows of pumpkins glowing faintly, their vines curling like skeletal hands. In the center stood the old farmhouse, its windows shattered, roof sagging like a broken spine. Claire shivered, clutching her jacket tighter, but the pumpkin's glow drew her in. There was warmth in it. Safety, maybe. As she stepped between the rows, the vines brushed her legs, almost gently. Each pumpkin seemed alive in its own way. Some pulsed faintly. Others exhaled tiny wisps of fog through their carved mouths. Claire knelt beside one and whispered, "How? How are you glowing?" She reached out and touched the soft orange skin and flinched. It was warm, warmer than her own hands. She stood quickly and looked around. The air was thick with mist, the smell of decay sweet and heavy. Then, somewhere deeper in the field, she heard it, a soft sobbing sound like a child crying. "Hello," she called out. "Is someone there?" The crying stopped. Then, slowly it began again, closer this time. Claire's heart pounded. She followed the sound, pushing through the vines, her flashlight shaking. The rows seemed endless, twisting, bending back on themselves like a maze. Then she saw it. A single pumpkin, larger than all the others, resting in the middle of an open patch of dirt. Its surface was smooth and pale, almost human-like, and on its side was carved a face that looked just like hers. She stumbled backward, breath catching in her throat. "What the hell?" The crying stopped. Then, from somewhere behind her, a man's voice whispered, "Don't touch what grows here." Claire spun around, but no one was there. Only the wind moving through the dead corn. The voice came again, lower, almost to her ear now. "They're not pumpkins. They're graves." The vines began to move, slithering across the ground, coiling around her ankles. Claire screamed, tearing at them, but the more she struggled, the tighter they pulled. Her flashlight fell, spinning across the dirt, illuminating dozens of pumpkins now surrounding her, each one carved with a different human face. Men, women, children. Some looked terrified, others twisted in agony. The ground beneath her trembled. The big pumpkin in the center split open with a wet sound, revealing something pale inside, a hand, skeletal and twitching. Claire's screams echoed through the empty field. The vines dragged her toward the open pumpkin, her fingers clawing the dirt, nails snapping as she tried to hold on. Her flashlight went out, and then silence, only the faint hum of the wind. The next morning, a trucker driving through Oak Ridge reported seeing new pumpkins growing along the roadside, bright orange and fresh, their vines stretching out like fingers reaching for the pavement. No one thought much of it until locals visited Hallow later that week. The farmhouse was gone, burned to the ground. But the pumpkins, there were hundreds more now, perfectly shaped and glistening under the gray sky. At the center of the field was one in particular, larger than the rest, carved with the face of a woman. Some say it looked exactly like Claire. Years passed, and Hallow became one of those places people dared each other to visit. Teenagers would sneak out on Halloween, just to see if the stories were true. They'd bring flashlights and cameras, stepping into the foggy field with nervous laughter. But most didn't make it past the first row, because if you listen closely out there, you can still hear the wind whispering between the vines, soft, desperate, and human. In 2016, a paranormal investigator named Ryan Jakes went missing after live streaming from Hallow. Viewers watched as he walked deeper into the field, describing the eerie warmth of the soil and the faint crying sound that followed him. Then his camera panned down to a pumpkin at his feet, carved with his own terrified face. The stream cut to static. 2 days later, police found his equipment scattered near the road, vines wrapped tightly around the tripod. The field had grown again, larger than before, swallowing even the old fence posts. No one farms there anymore. No one dares. The land belongs to something else now, something that feeds on grief, loneliness, and the foolish curiosity of those who think old stories are just myths. They say on Halloween night, if you drive by Hallow with your windows down, you'll smell the faint sweetness of rotten pumpkins and hear the sound of someone crying in the dark. And if you follow that sound, you might see a single pumpkin glowing brighter than the rest with your reflection staring back at you from its carved face. So if you ever pass a pumpkin patch glowing in the fog, and one of them looks a little too fresh, maybe don't stop. Because some fields don't just grow crops, they grow souls. This is Wrong Turn Horror. And remember, what's buried in the earth doesn't always stay dead. For as long as anyone could remember, Miller's Creek had been a place people avoided after dark. It wasn't because of wild animals or even crime. It was the lights. Strange, drifting blue lights that appeared just above the water every October, glowing like lanterns beneath the mist. Some said it was swamp gas. Others said it was spirits. But those who tried to find out never came back the same. The story starts in 1983 with a boy named Evan Pierce. He was 16, a quiet kid, more comfortable exploring woods than hanging out at Halloween parties. His father, a local fisherman, had vanished near Miller's Creek a year earlier. His boat found overturned, his flashlight still burning on the muddy shore. The sheriff ruled it an accident, but Evan's mother always swore her husband didn't drown. The creek took him, she'd whisper, and it'll take anyone foolish enough to look into its light. But grief does strange things to a person, and on the night of October 31st, Evan couldn't take the not knowing anymore. He packed a flashlight, a thermos of coffee, and his father's old compass, and rode his bike to the edge of Miller's Creek. The moon was high, the fog thick enough to blur the world into shadows. Crickets had gone silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. He stood on the rotted dock, staring into the still water. Nothing moved, not even a ripple. He almost turned back until he saw it. A faint blue glow, floating just beneath the surface, moving slowly against the current. Then another, and another. They drifted toward him like underwater fireflies, humming softly, almost singing. Evan froze. His father used to hum that same tune. A low, haunting lullaby he'd play on his guitar before bed. "You hear that?" Evan whispered. His voice shook. "Dad!" The lights flickered brighter, pulsing in rhythm with the melody. The surface of the water began to ripple. Then, rising from the fog, came the faint outline of a man, standing waist-deep in the creek, his head tilted slightly, his skin glowing pale blue beneath the moonlight. "Dad!" Evan whispered again, taking a shaky step forward. The figure smiled, but something about that smile was wrong. Too wide, too still. His eyes reflected the light like glass. He raised one dripping arm and beckoned Evan closer. The boy stepped onto the dock's edge. The boards creaked. His breath formed pale clouds in the cold air. He wanted to run, but something in his chest pulled him forward, something between hope and horror. He reached out his hand. The moment his fingers touched the figure's skin, the light flared, blinding white, and the world vanished into water and screaming. 3 days later, Evan's bike was found lying near the shore, his flashlight cracked in half. The sheriff said he must have slipped and drowned, but the divers never found a body, just the compass, floating in a slow circle, the needle spinning endlessly. After that, people stayed away from the creek. But that didn't stop the lights. Every Halloween, they'd appear again, drifting through the fog, moving along the current toward the old bridge. Kids would dare each other to go down there, to touch the water, to see the lights up close. But everyone in town knew the rule. Don't answer when the creek calls your name. 30 years later, in 2013, a YouTuber named Lacey Grant decided to test the legend for her Halloween vlog. She was a true crime content creator, always chasing haunted places and ghost stories. She thought Miller's Creek would be perfect for her new Real Hauntings series. She and her boyfriend Tyler arrived in town just before sunset, recording everything. Interviews with locals, drone shots of the foggy woods, even the abandoned mill that gave the creek its name. They laughed off the ghost stories, calling them Appalachian clickbait. But as night fell, the tone changed. The air grew heavier. Their camera batteries started dying faster than usual. And every time Lacey pointed her microphone toward the creek, the audio filled with faint static that sounded almost like a whisper. By midnight, the fog was so thick they could barely see the water. Lacey set up her tripod on the bridge and hit record. "Okay, guys," she said, smiling nervously at the camera. "It's officially Halloween night. We're at Miller's Creek, and locals say this is when the lights appear. Let's see if it's real." Tyler aimed his flashlight toward the water. "If this is just swamp gas, we'll prove it." But then, there they were. At first, just one, pale and slow, drifting beneath the surface. Then another. Then dozens, spreading through the fog like stars sinking into the current. Lacey gasped, her voice trembling. "Oh my God, they're real." Tyler leaned over the railing, holding the camera closer. "Look at that. Do you hear that sound?" The microphone caught it, faint humming. A melody. The same lullaby Evan's father used to play. Lacey frowned, her smile fading. "That song, where have I heard that before?" Tyler turned. "What?" The humming grew louder. A voice began to form beneath it, soft, familiar. Lacey, her eyes widened. It was her mother's voice. She hadn't heard it in years. Her mother had died when she was 9. "Mom," she whispered, stepping closer to the edge. Tyler reached for her. "Lacey, wait." But she was already moving, one hand outstretched, the lights swirling faster now, reflecting in her wide, tearful eyes. "Mom, are you there?" The camera caught everything. Her foot slipped. Tyler lunged forward, shouting her name. The video ended with a splash and his panicked breathing. The police found Tyler 2 days later, sitting on the bridge, shivering, unable to speak. Lacey's body was never found. But when the footage was recovered from the camera, investigators noticed something horrifying in the last frame before she fell. Her reflection in the water wasn't her own. It was a pale, hollow-eyed figure smiling up from beneath the surface. Locals say Miller's Creek changed after that. The water grew darker, thicker somehow like oil. And the lights no longer appeared just on Halloween. They came whenever someone died nearby. A hunter passing through once claimed he saw hundreds of them, stretching for miles down the creek, all moving the same direction, toward the town. The next morning, a flood hit the valley, washing away 3 houses and a bridge. The sheriff said it was the rain, but the old folks whispered that the creek was hungry again. Last year, in 2024, a teenager named Mara Whitfield recorded a TikTok at the same bridge. The video went viral because of what appeared behind her. As she danced, faint blue lights rose in the water below, one of them forming a hand, reaching up toward the railing. She never noticed it until her followers flooded the comments with timestamps and screenshots. A week later, Mara disappeared. Her phone was found on the bridge, still recording. The final few seconds showed her turning, hearing something in the fog, whispering Dad, even though her father was alive and at home. Then came a single flash of light and silence. If you visit Miller's Creek today, you'll find new warning signs posted by the county. Danger, unstable banks. No trespassing after dusk. But the locals know the truth. Those signs aren't about the land. They're about what waits beneath it. They say the lights aren't random. They're lost souls drawn to the grief of the living. They mimic the faces and voices of the people you miss most. They don't want you to find them. They want you to follow. And if you do, you'll never see the sunrise again. They called it the Bright House, an old Victorian home that sat at the end of Clover Hill Lane. Its windows always glowed at night, a pale yellow light spilling through the curtains no matter the hour, no matter the season. For years, people assumed someone still lived there, maybe an old couple too stubborn to move away. But the truth was far worse. Because according to county records, the house had been empty since 1972, the year the Henderson family died inside it on Halloween night. No one knew exactly what happened that night, only fragments. The father, Arthur Henderson, had been a local electrician, known for his obsession with building new wiring systems in old houses. His wife, Martha, was the quiet type, always smiling, always baking pies for the neighborhood. They had one daughter, Eleanor, 10 years old, bright and curious. On Halloween night, neighbors saw the family handing out candy, dressed in matching costumes. Arthur as a scarecrow, Martha as a witch, and Eleanor as a little pumpkin. Everything seemed normal until the power went out across the entire neighborhood. When the lights came back on a few minutes later, the Henderson house burned like a lantern. Flames in every window, orange light spilling into the fog. Firefighters rushed in, but inside they found no bodies. Just melted candy, a broken jack-o'-lantern, and the faint smell of ozone and burnt copper. Since then, the house had been boarded up, condemned, and left to rot. But the lights never went out again. At first, people thought it was some kind of wiring malfunction. But when electricians tried to cut the power lines, they discovered something horrifying. The house wasn't even connected to the grid anymore. The cables were completely severed. Yet every night, at precisely 8:03 p.m., the lights flickered on by themselves. In 1994, a new family moved to Clover Hill. The Parkers, a young couple with 2 kids. They didn't believe in ghosts, just local gossip. From their backyard, they could see the glow of the bright house through the trees. At first, they laughed about it, calling it the night light of the neighborhood. But their son Jamie, who was 9 at the time, didn't laugh. Jamie started talking about the girl in the window. He said she waved at him every night. She had long dark hair and wore an orange dress with little black pumpkins on it. His parents brushed it off, assuming it was his imagination. But then, one morning, his mother found a small handprint on his bedroom window, too small to be his, pressed from the outside, smeared with ash. That night, Jamie screamed in his sleep. When his father rushed in, the boy was sitting up, trembling, whispering, "She asked me to come play inside." They called the police the next day, but by the time they arrived, the bright house was dark for the first time in decades. Its windows black, its doors sealed shut. The very next night, however, the lights came back on, brighter than ever. And this time, 2 figures were seen standing in the upstairs window. One tall, one small. Jamie stopped talking after that. Years passed. The Parkers moved away, and Clover Hill became half abandoned. No one wanted to live near that house. The local teens turned it into a dare spot. Stay in the yard for 5 minutes on Halloween night, they'd say. Most only lasted 30 seconds before running back, pale and shaking. They all said the same thing. The lights flickered when they got close, like the house was reacting to them. And sometimes they'd see someone standing behind the curtains, watching. One Halloween in 2007, a college student named Megan Ross decided to document the legend for a photography project. She was fearless, or maybe just curious in the wrong way. She parked her car at the end of the lane and started filming around 10 p.m., camera light cutting through the fog. The house glowed faintly in the distance, yellow and steady. As she got closer, her audio recorder picked up a strange humming sound, like electricity buzzing through the air. She whispered into the mic, no power lines connected, but it sounded alive. The closer she got, the warmer it felt, unnaturally warm, like standing near a generator. Megan circled the house, filming each side. The grass was overgrown, the porch sagging under its own weight. Then she noticed something odd. The back door was open a few inches, swaying gently in the wind. She called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" No answer, only that faint buzzing. Against every instinct, she stepped inside. The house smelled of burnt sugar and dust. Every light in the place was on, kitchen lamps, hallway sconces, even the attic bulb. But the bulbs weren't glowing normally. They pulsed faintly in a slow rhythm, as if the house itself had a heartbeat. Her camera captured the flickering shadows moving across the walls. Some of them didn't match her movements. When she turned left, one shadow turned right. When she stopped breathing, she could still hear another breath echoing from the kitchen. Then came the sound of footsteps upstairs. She aimed the camera up the stairwell, her voice shaking. "Hello? Is someone up there?" No answer, just a faint creak of a floorboard. Megan took one step up, then another. Her camera light caught something on the wall, a photo, half melted from age. It showed a man in overalls, a woman holding a pie, and a little girl in an orange dress. The Hendersons. The girl's eyes seemed scratched out, but when Megan blinked, the scratches were gone. She reached the landing and froze. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. The far end seemed to fade into darkness that swallowed her flashlight beam. She took another cautious step, and every light in the house flickered at once. From somewhere deep in the dark, a child's voice whispered, "You came to play." Megan turned and ran. She barely made it down the stairs before the front door slammed shut in her face. The lights began to hum louder, each bulb vibrating in its socket. She aimed the camera at the door and screamed for help, pounding the wood until her fists bled. And then the lights went out. When police arrived the next morning, her car was still parked outside. Inside the house, they found her camera on the kitchen floor. The footage ended abruptly, Megan screaming, the house flashing white, then static. Her body was never found. But the next night, the lights came back on again. In 2021, the town finally decided to demolish the bright house. Contractors arrived with heavy machinery, but every time they cut into the walls, their equipment short-circuited. One of the workers swore he heard crying through the drywall, like a child trapped inside. Another ran out mid-shift, saying he saw a shadow crawl across the ceiling and vanish into a light fixture. They quit after 2 days. The house was left untouched. Now, every Halloween, the lights burn brighter than ever. People driving past say it looks like the whole house is on fire, glowing gold against the black sky. Some even claim they can see faces in the windows. Arthur, Martha, and Eleanor, forever replaying their last Halloween night, trapped in an endless current of electricity and grief. And if you stop your car, roll down your window, and listen closely, you might hear a faint buzzing under your skin, like static building inside your veins. Because they say the bright house doesn't just shine, it feeds. Every time someone looks too long, it remembers them. In 2023, a paranormal live streamer named Derek Hall decided to go live from the yard on Halloween night. Every Halloween in the small town of Dawson Hollow, people wore masks. Not the cheap plastic ones from the grocery store, but hand-carved pumpkin masks, real pumpkins hollowed out and shaped into eerie, grinning faces. It was a local tradition that dated back over a century, meant to ward off evil spirits. The town even held an annual pumpkin parade through the main square. Families carved their masks, lit candles inside them, and marched through the fog to the old churchyard, singing harvest songs. It was supposed to be harmless fun, until one year it wasn't. The story began with Eli Turner, a quiet 17-year-old who hated Halloween. His father had been the town's best pumpkin carver before he died in a freak accident at the annual parade 5 years earlier. A propane torch used to light the parade floats had exploded, setting his mask on fire while he was wearing it. The townsfolk called it a tragic accident, but Eli's mother always said it wasn't an accident at all. That mask wasn't right, she'd whisper. He carved something he shouldn't have. After that, she refused to let Eli take part in the parade. But as the years passed, the townspeople began to talk about how the Turners had abandoned their duty, how Eli was breaking tradition. Kids taunted him at school, calling him maskless. So that Halloween, Eli decided to make one last mask, to honor his father, to prove them wrong, and maybe, deep down, to understand what really happened that night. He walked to the old pumpkin patch at the edge of town, where no one went anymore. The field belonged to Mr. Harland, a farmer who disappeared years ago, leaving behind a patch of massive, twisted pumpkins that grew year-round. The soil was strange, black and soft, smelling faintly of copper. But the pumpkins themselves were perfect, round and unblemished, glowing faintly even in the dark. Eli chose the biggest one he could find. It was heavy and warm to the touch, as if something inside was alive. He carried it home, his hands sticky with its sap, and placed it on the kitchen table. His mother begged him not to carve it. "Please, Eli, that patch isn't right. People used to say Harlan fed it with blood." He forced a smile. "It's just a pumpkin, Mom." But that night, when he began carving, he noticed something strange. The pumpkin's flesh wasn't orange. It was deep red, like meat. The smell was sweet and sour, almost metallic. Still, he kept working, cutting the eyes, the grin, the jagged mouth. And when he lit a candle inside, the whole thing seemed to pulse. The carved mouth curved wider. The eyes flickered as if they were watching him. For a moment, he swore he heard something whisper from inside the hollowed gourd. A soft, muffled voice, like someone breathing through cloth. He told himself it was just the wind. But when he blew out the candle, the glow didn't fade right away. It lingered, faint and pulsing like a heartbeat. The next day, the whole town gathered for the pumpkin parade. Fog rolled in early, thick and cold, blanketing the streets. Lanterns swayed in the mist. Families marched through the square, wearing their carved masks, singing the same song they'd sung for generations. Eli arrived late, carrying his pumpkin mask in both hands. People stared as he walked by. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. Its carved smile seemed almost human, its candlelight flickering like fire behind glass eyes. Mayor Griggs clapped him on the shoulder. "Glad to see the Turners keeping tradition alive," he said, though his voice carried a nervous edge. As the parade began, Eli placed the mask over his head. It was heavy but fit perfectly, almost too perfectly, as if it had been waiting for him. The smell inside was sharp and earthy, making his head swim. He could barely see through the eye holes, but he walked with the others, the song echoing through the square. Musical note, light the way, keep the dead at bay. Halfway through the parade, Eli began to feel lightheaded. His vision swirled. The inside of the mask grew warmer, almost hot, the air thick with the scent of rot. He tried to lift it off, but it wouldn't budge. The vines from the inside, fine, thin tendrils, had wrapped around his neck. He tugged harder, panic rising, but the mask seemed to cling tighter. "Eli," someone asked beside him, "are you okay?" He tried to answer, but his voice came out muffled. The crowd around him began to blur. He felt the heat spreading across his face, then down his chest like fire under his skin. The song continued, the people marching, unaware that the boy in the pumpkin mask had stopped moving. Then, a scream cut through the music. Someone shouted, pointing at Eli. The flames were inside the mask, licking through the carved eyes, the mouth. But no one could reach him. The vines had spread across his arms and shoulders, holding the mask tight as it burned. Within seconds, the fire consumed him. When the crowd finally tore the mask free, it wasn't a pumpkin anymore. It was bone-white and hollow, shaped exactly like Eli's face. The town called it another tragic accident. The mayor canceled the parade for 5 years after that. But those who saw what really happened couldn't forget. They said when the mask burned, something screamed from inside it. something that didn't sound human. Eli's mother left town soon after. She claimed she could still hear his voice at night, whispering through the walls, telling her it's still growing. In 2019, the pumpkin parade returned. The town wanted to revive the tradition, make it fun again. They even built a memorial float for Eli and his father. But not everyone was happy about it. Some locals said the soil in Harlan's patch had started moving again. Fresh pumpkins growing overnight, too fast, too big. That Halloween, a group of teens broke into the pumpkin field to film a TikTok. They laughed and made jokes about Eli's haunted pumpkin. But when one of them kicked a vine, it bled, a thick, red sap oozing onto his shoe. They screamed and ran, leaving their phones behind. The footage was later recovered by police. It showed the pumpkins glowing faintly in the dark, each one pulsing like a heartbeat. And right before the video cut out, a voice whispered, "Make me another face." The next morning, a new pumpkin appeared on the steps of the old Turner house. It was perfectly carved, 2 deep eyes, a wide grin, and an inscription at the bottom that read, "The mask fits again." The sheriff had it taken away and locked up in the town hall's basement. But within days, the building's power began to flicker every night at the same time, 8:03 p.m., the same time Eli's father had died. Maintenance workers swore they could hear scratching from inside the storage room. When they opened it, the pumpkin was gone. In its place was a small, withered mask made of dried pumpkin flesh, with 2 eye holes and a faint smell of smoke. Since then, no one carves pumpkins in Dawson Hollow. The mayor banned the parade permanently after a group of children claimed they saw the burning boy standing in the field, his head glowing orange through the fog. But every Halloween night, if you drive past the edge of town, you can see faint lights moving among the dead vines. The pumpkins grow there still, red and wet and perfect, and sometimes if you listen closely, you'll hear a soft, wet carving sound, as if invisible hands are shaping faces in the dark. Every small town has that one place kids dare each other to go on Halloween night. In the town of Marrow Creek, it was the old Whitaker cornfield. The rows stretched for miles, endless walls of dry, whispering stalks that swayed even when there was no wind. They said a scarecrow stood in the center, one that was different from all the others. Older kids called him the caller because if you stayed quiet long enough, you could hear him whisper your name. The legend began decades ago, after the Whitaker family vanished one Halloween. Their farmhouse was found empty, dinner still on the table, candles still burning, but every room was filled with corn husks. The only thing missing was their youngest son, Samuel, who'd been seen the night before, standing in the field wearing his father's oversized flannel shirt. Some said his spirit haunted the field, luring people in to join him. Others said he never left, that his body had been used to build the scarecrow itself. In 2018, a group of friends decided to test the legend. There was Mara, quiet and cautious, Jason, the ringleader, Chloe, who recorded everything for her vlog, and Troy, who claimed he didn't believe in ghost stories. They were seniors in high school, bored and desperate for something that felt real. That Halloween night, they skipped the town party and parked their truck near the edge of the cornfield, headlights cutting through the mist. The air was cold, smelling faintly of smoke and wet soil. In the distance, they could hear faint laughter from trick-or-treaters, but here it was dead silent. No crickets, no wind, just a faint rustle of dry corn stalks brushing against each other. Jason smirked and said, "All right, rules are simple. We walk to the center, find the scarecrow, and take a selfie with it. First one to chicken out buys pizza for the rest of the week." Mara hesitated. "Jason, they say people get lost out there. Like the paths change." He laughed. "It's corn, not Narnia." They entered the field, flashlights cutting narrow tunnels of light through the golden maze. The ground was soft beneath their feet. Every few steps, they heard the crunch of dry leaves, sometimes too many footsteps for just the 4 of them. Chloe kept filming, whispering commentary for her viewers. "It's almost midnight. We're in the Whitaker field. If the scarecrow calls my name, I'm suing. Her nervous laughter was the only sound for a while. Then, somewhere deep inside the maze, came a faint creak like rope tightening against wood. Jason grinned. That's him. The caller. Shut up, Mara hissed. It's probably just. Before she could finish, something rustled to their left. Not the slow swaying of corn, but quick, heavy movement. They froze. Flashlights darted, beams trembling, but there was nothing there. Just the endless stalks, shifting slightly, as if something large had just moved through them. Let's go back, Troy muttered. Jason rolled his eyes. We're halfway there. Don't start now. They walked deeper. The fog thickened until they could barely see 3 feet ahead. The path twisted in strange ways, splitting and rejoining, as if the corn was rearranging itself. The ground grew uneven, damp with something that smelled like iron. When Mara's flashlight flickered, she saw what she thought was a scarecrow ahead, a shape hanging from a wooden post, head tilted down. She gasped, but when she blinked, it was gone. Did you see that? She whispered. No, Jason said. What? It looked like someone hanging. Perfect, he joked. Means we're close. It took them nearly 20 minutes to reach the center. And there it was, the scarecrow. It was taller than any of them, arms stretched wide on a crooked post, clothes shredded but clean of dust. A burlap sack covered its head, stitched crudely with black twine. Its chest had a faint, dark stain, and from its sleeves hung thin cords. Not rope, but vines pulsing slightly like veins. Jason laughed nervously. See? Just a decoration. But Mara couldn't look away. The scarecrow's head seemed to move slightly, angling toward her. The sack shifted as if something inside breathed. Take the selfie, Troy said. Let's go. Jason stepped closer, lifting his phone. The flash went off, and in that split second, everyone saw it. The eyes beneath the sack weren't buttons or fabric. They were human eyes, wet and unblinking, staring right at them. Chloe screamed. The scarecrow's head jerked. One of its arms twitched, and the rope creaked again, louder this time. Jason stumbled back. It's fake. Someone's messing with us. Then from somewhere deep in the corn, a voice called out. A boy's voice, faint but clear. Mara. She froze. It sounded young, maybe 12 or 13. Who's there? She whispered. Mara. The voice came again, closer this time. Jason swung his flashlight toward the sound, but the beam caught only empty corn stalks. Then another voice whispered, Jason, this time from the opposite direction. Troy cursed under his breath. Let's go, man. This isn't funny. But the voices kept coming, all around them now. Each one soft, childlike, whispering their names. Chloe's camera light flickered wildly as the audio filled with static. And then the scarecrow's arm moved again, slowly, deliberately, its head rising to face them fully. The burlap stretched and split down the middle, revealing a face beneath. Pale, bloated, eyes clouded but alive. It whispered in a rasping, broken voice. Stay with me. The corn exploded with motion. Shadows darted between the rows. Mara screamed as something cold and wet wrapped around her wrist, a vine dragging her backward. Jason grabbed her, pulling hard until the vine snapped, spraying red fluid that steamed in the air. They ran. The paths twisted like a maze, every turn leading back to the same clearing. The scarecrow's post loomed in every direction, no matter which way they turned. The whispers grew louder, hundreds of voices now, chanting in overlapping tones. Stay, stay, stay. Troy dropped his flashlight, plunging half the path into darkness. They stumbled over roots, branches, and something soft that crunched underfoot. When Mara looked down, she realized it wasn't corn. It was bone. By the time they reached the edge of the field, only 2 made it out, Mara and Chloe. Jason and Troy were gone. The fog swallowed them whole. The 2 girls burst from the corn, collapsing by the truck, gasping and sobbing. Mara looked back once. Through the mist, she saw silhouettes hanging among the stalks, for scarecrows now, not one. Each swaying gently, heads tilted, vines wrapping their arms like tendons. When police arrived the next morning, they found only Chloe's phone. The footage was still recording, though the screen was cracked and the battery nearly dead. The last minute of video showed Jason screaming, pulling at something off-screen, and then the phone dropping into the dirt. A faint child's voice whispered, "Thank you for coming back." The police searched for weeks, but never found the missing boys. The cornfield was burned down a month later after more disappearances. But people say no matter how many times it's cleared, it grows back, taller and thicker each year. In 2023, a local farmer reported seeing lights moving in the field again, phone lights like people walking in a line. When he went to check, the field was empty. But the next morning, there were fresh scarecrows standing in the center, each wearing modern clothes. One had a high school jacket with Jason's name stitched on it. Every Halloween, when the last candle burns out and the trick-or-treaters are gone, the people of Raven's Edge whisper about the Hollow Man. He doesn't knock. He doesn't chase. He just waits. Some say he's a spirit born from loneliness. Others say he's something older, something that feeds on emptiness itself. But everyone agrees on one thing. If you see him, you're already his. In the fall of 2016, the Morgan family moved into the outskirts of Raven's Edge, a quiet little town surrounded by pine woods and fields littered with old scarecrows. It was their first Halloween there, and for Daniel Morgan, a single father of two, it was supposed to be the start of something new. His wife, Elise, had died 2 years earlier in a car accident, and ever since then, he'd been trying to rebuild what was left of their family. His daughter Lila, 11, was the quiet one, the kind of child who drew pictures of ghosts and animals talking to each other. His son Ben, 15, acted tough, but the truth was he hadn't spoken to his father much since Elise's death. That Halloween night, Daniel tried to make things normal again. He decorated the porch with fake cobwebs, carved a pumpkin with Lila, and let Ben invite a few friends over. The night air was crisp and smoky, the sky a deep bruise of purple and gray. Somewhere in the distance, someone was setting off small fireworks. But as the sun went down, something felt off. The woods behind their house were unusually quiet, not even the sound of crickets. Lila noticed it first. "Dad," she said softly, staring out the window, "someone's out there." Daniel looked but saw nothing, just the black tree-line swaying in the wind. He smiled and said, "Probably just a trick-or-treater." But Lila shook her head. "He's too tall." By 8 p.m., the neighborhood was nearly dark. Ben's friends had left, laughing and shouting down the road. Lila went to bed early, leaving her drawing pad on the kitchen table. Daniel sat with a beer, staring at the jack-o'-lantern flickering on the porch. Its grin seemed to twist slightly in the candlelight, the shadows shifting like they were breathing. That's when he heard it, a knock. 3 soft taps. He frowned. No one was supposed to be out this late. He opened the door, but there was no one there. Only the fog rolling off the field and the faint outline of something tall near the edge of the woods. It looked like a scarecrow at first. Long, thin limbs, slumped shoulders, a burlap sack for a head. But it was standing too straight. Daniel blinked and it was gone. He stepped outside, the cold biting his skin. The field smelled of wet dirt and smoke. The pumpkin's light flickered again, and for just a moment, he thought he saw movement, a long shadow gliding across the ground, stretching toward him. He went back inside, locking the door. "Get a grip," he muttered. But then he noticed something that made his stomach twist, Lila's drawing pad. The page on top showed their house, drawn in crayon, and a tall, faceless figure standing in the field. She'd written 3 words beneath it in her small, careful handwriting. "He's almost here." The next morning, Daniel found strange tracks in the dirt outside the porch. Long, narrow impressions like footprints, but too large to belong to any person. The ground beneath them was cold, colder than the air around it. He tried to laugh it off, but Lila refused to go outside. She sat by the window all day, staring toward the woods. That night, the power went out. Daniel lit candles and checked the fuse box, but everything seemed fine. When he came back inside, he froze. The jack-o'-lantern was gone. There was just a puddle of melted wax where it had been. And on the front door, drawn in ash, was the outline of a hollow face. Two empty eyes and a wide, dripping grin. Ben came downstairs, irritated. "Dad, what are you doing?" Daniel pointed to the door. "Did you do this?" "What?" "No." Before they could argue, a noise echoed from outside. Not a knock this time. A dragging sound, like something being pulled through the dirt. Then came a whisper. It was soft, distant, but unmistakable. "Daniel." He froze. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Ben nodded slowly. "Someone just said your name." Daniel grabbed a flashlight and opened the door. The fog was thicker now, curling around the porch like living smoke. He shone the light across the yard. Nothing. Then he saw it. Something tall and thin standing among the trees. The light caught its head, the same hollow, burlap face from Lila's drawing. It turned slightly, as if looking right at him, though it had no eyes. Its arms hung loose, swaying like ropes in the wind. Daniel stepped back, shutting the door. "Get away from the windows," he told Ben. "What was that?" "I don't know." He went to Lila's room, but she wasn't in bed. The window was open, curtains fluttering in the cold. A faint trail of footprints, small and barefoot, led out across the backyard toward the field. Daniel ran after her, calling her name, flashlight shaking in his hand. The fog was so thick he could barely see his feet. The air grew colder with every step, the kind of cold that burned your lungs. "Lila," he shouted. "Where are you?" He reached the edge of the cornfield, or what used to be one. Now it was just a patch of dead earth, cracked and dry. And in the center stood the Hollow Man. He was closer now, tall as a lamppost, his body nothing but a bundle of twigs and torn cloth, his face a hollow sack stitched shut at the mouth. Lila stood in front of him, her nightgown glowing faintly in the moonlight. She was humming something, a slow, eerie tune Daniel didn't recognize. "Lila, get away from him." She turned to him, eyes unfocused, voice barely above a whisper. "He's cold, Daddy. He wants to be warm again." Daniel took a step forward, but the Hollow Man lifted one long, bony hand. The ground trembled beneath Daniel's feet. He stumbled back as cracks split the soil and dark smoke began to rise. The Hollow Man's chest opened like a wound, hollow inside, completely empty. Then Daniel understood what it wanted. It wanted to be filled. It wanted him. He grabbed Lila, yanking her away. She screamed, but he didn't stop running until they reached the house. Ben pulled them inside and slammed the door. The walls shook as something slammed against the porch, once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. They sat together in the dark for hours, too afraid to move. When morning came, the fog was gone. The yard was empty. The tracks had vanished. For a while, things were normal again. Weeks passed. The snow came early that year, covering the fields in white. Lila stopped talking about the Hollow Man, though sometimes Daniel would catch her staring out the window, humming that same strange tune. But one night, in late December, Daniel woke to find her standing in the hallway, whispering to the dark. "He's not cold anymore," she said softly. And before he could ask what she meant, every light in the house flickered out. The next morning, Ben was gone. His bed untouched. His phone left on the dresser. Out in the field, Daniel found only his jacket, frozen stiff, standing upright, as if someone had draped it over an invisible frame. The sheriff searched for weeks. Nothing. Lila never spoke again. She stopped eating, stopped drawing, and, eventually, stopped responding altogether. The doctor said it was trauma, but Daniel knew better. He knew what had taken his son. Every Halloween, locals whispered about Black Hollow, a stretch of farmland outside an abandoned town where pumpkins grew unnaturally large, with faces that seemed carved by unseen hands. Nobody lived there anymore. The soil was said to be cursed. But one October night, a teenage girl named Harper Wills and her friends decided to test the legend. They were filming for a Halloween challenge, spending the night in the haunted pumpkin field. The moon was full, the fog hung low, and the scarecrows stood like dark sentinels among the rows. Harper tried to keep the camera steady as they passed the old wooden sign that read, "Black Hollow, do not enter after dusk." They laughed, pretending to be brave. But the deeper they went, the quieter it got. No crickets, no wind, just the sound of crunching dirt beneath their shoes. Then, Harper noticed something strange. The pumpkins weren't just large. They were shaped like human heads, their mouths twisted open in silent screams. Her friend Ethan joked nervously, "Guess someone went all out decorating this year." But Harper couldn't laugh. Some of the faces looked disturbingly familiar, like people she'd seen before on missing posters from nearby towns. They set up camp in the center of the field, lit candles, and tried to film an intro. But when Harper replayed the footage, her heart froze. Behind them, in every shot, one of the scarecrows had moved closer. She looked up, and sure enough, there it was. The thing's head tilted slightly now, and its arms hung loose, as if its straw limbs had softened. The others brushed it off as a prank until they heard a low groan echo from somewhere behind the rows. It wasn't the wind. It was a human sound, dry and cracked like someone forcing air through dust. Ethan went to check. Minutes passed. No answer. Harper called for him again, her voice trembling. Then she saw it. One of the pumpkins had fresh blood dripping down its carved grin. She stumbled back, clutching the camera as shadows moved between the vines. One by one, the scarecrows began to twitch, heads jerking, legs bending backward. Their sacks weren't filled with straw anymore. They were filled with rotting flesh. Harper ran, tripping over the vines as whispering voices surrounded her. She looked down and realized the ground wasn't dirt at all. It was covered in a layer of decaying hands reaching up from the soil. The last thing her camera captured was her screaming, falling into a pit filled with half-buried bodies, their faces twisted like the pumpkins around her. The next morning, a group of locals found the abandoned camera. The video ended with a blurry figure holding the lens, whispering in a voice that wasn't human. Another harvest for Black Hollow. When investigators went to the field, there were no signs of Harper or her friends. Just hundreds of pumpkins freshly sprouted overnight, each one carved with a new, terrified face. Locals say the patch grows larger every Halloween. And if you ever drive past Black Hollow on a foggy night, you can still hear the faint echo of laughter turning into screams, carried through the wind from somewhere deep within the cursed soil. The town of Hallow's End used to be famous for its Halloween parade. Every October 31st, hundreds of families would gather on Main Street. Children in costumes, pumpkins glowing on porches, and music echoing through the hills. But 20 years ago, the parade ended abruptly after an unexplained tragedy that left the town abandoned overnight. Since then, no one dared to enter Hallow's End after dark. That is, until Mara Grayson, a freelance journalist chasing forgotten urban legends, decided to visit. She was fascinated by stories of the vanished parade, in which the townspeople supposedly disappeared mid-celebration. Locals from nearby areas claimed that on Halloween night, if you stood near the old highway turnoff, you could still hear faint laughter and parade drums coming from the empty streets. Mara didn't believe in ghosts, but she did believe in a good story. She arrived just before sunset, her headlights slicing through the fog that blanketed the valley. The welcome sign was faded, splattered with rust. "Welcome to Hallow's End, where every night is Halloween." Below the slogan, someone had scrawled in black paint, "Turn back before dark." Mara parked beside what used to be the town square. The place looked frozen in time. Storefronts boarded up, carnival banners rotted, a carousel half collapsed beside a fountain filled with stagnant rainwater. She set up her camera, talking into the mic. October 31st. I'm in the abandoned town of Hallow's, and to uncover the truth about what happened during the final parade of 2005. As she walked deeper into the square, the air grew heavier, thicker, as if she were wading into something unseen. The wind stopped. The town was utterly still, except for the faint creak of the carousel turning. though no wind should have been strong enough to move it. Mara pointed her flashlight toward it and froze. The wooden horses were missing their heads. Each pole ended in a splintered neck, dripping with something dark. She swallowed hard, convincing herself it was old paint. But the smell, iron, sharp and fresh, told her otherwise. Past the carousel, she found the old parade floats. They were lined along the street like corpses from another time. A giant pumpkin float with a gaping mouth. A ghost float with shredded white cloth fluttering like torn skin. Her light caught a movement, just a flicker, inside one of them. Probably a raccoon, she whispered. But when she shined the light again, she saw a child's mask staring back. It was porcelain, cracked, painted like a clown with a frozen grin. The mask was attached to a small mannequin, or what she thought was one, until it turned its head. Mara stumbled back, tripping over an old candy bucket. The figure crawled out of the float, dragging its legs behind it, joints bending wrong. Its hollow eyes fixed on her as it whispered, "Don't miss the parade." She ran toward the town hall, heart pounding, breath coming in short gasps. Inside, dust swirled around her flashlight beam. Faded banners still hung. Happy Halloween 2005. 100th Annual Parade tonight. Papers littered the floor, permits, costume designs, parade lists. She noticed something strange on the sign-in sheet. Every name had been crossed out in red, except one at the bottom. Mayor Jonas fell. A door creaked upstairs. Against her better judgment, Mara followed. Each step groaned beneath her boots. She entered what appeared to be the mayor's office. A single pumpkin sat on the desk, perfectly preserved, its candle still burning inside. Beside it lay a dusty photo, the mayor standing at the 2005 parade podium, smiling beside rows of costume townsfolk. Only now, when she looked closer, she noticed that the people in the background weren't smiling. They were screaming. The candle in the pumpkin flickered violently, and Mara heard a distant sound. A brass band, faint but growing louder. She stepped to the window. Down on Main Street, lanterns were lighting themselves one by one. A float began to move, followed by another and another. The parade was back. The music echoed through the night, cheerful at first, then warped, slowing like a record dying. Shadows of people filled the streets, translucent figures dancing, waving, tossing candy that turned into ashes when it hit the ground. Mara grabbed her camera, filming as she whispered, "Oh my God, it's real." Suddenly the power surged through the building, and the old loudspeakers crackled alive. A voice, distorted but gleeful, boomed through the town. "Welcome back, dear friends. Hallow's and thanks you for returning for our final parade." The front doors of the town hall slammed open. The ghostly crowd turned toward the sound. Mara ducked behind the curtain, heart hammering as footsteps echoed on the stairs. A tall figure emerged, wearing the mayor's tattered sash, face hidden behind a pumpkin mask carved with a grotesque grin. He spoke in a low, hollow tone. "The show must go on." He raised one bony hand, and the spirits outside began to chant. The air filled with whispers, names, dates, screams. Mara tried to sneak toward the back exit, but the wooden floor betrayed her with a loud creak. The mayor's head snapped toward her. "A guest," he hissed. She bolted into the street. The ghostly parade surged around her, children's laughter echoing like nails on glass. She weaved through them, reaching the end of Main Street where the floats began. One of them, an enormous papier-mâché pumpkin, split open as she passed, spilling out dozens of small, porcelain masks. They clattered against the pavement, each turning to face her. Tiny whispers rose from them. "Stay joined forever." Mara ran for her car, but when she reached the square, it wasn't there. The road behind her had changed, curving endlessly back into town. No matter which direction she ran, the buildings looped in on themselves, trapping her. She stopped, panting, when she saw the crowd had gone silent. Every figure stood still, watching her. Then the mayor stepped forward, lifting his mask just enough for her to see his mouth, stitched shut with black thread. Yet his voice still came through her head. "We keep the spirit of Halloween alive. You will too." The ground trembled. The pavement split open beneath her feet, revealing orange light beneath, as though the entire town was hollow, filled with molten pumpkins. She tried to crawl away, but dozens of pale hands reached from the cracks, pulling her down. She screamed, grasping at the edge, the camera still in her hand. The last thing she saw before the light consumed her was the parade marching around her, the ghostly faces now wearing fresh flesh. When dawn broke, the fog lifted, and Hallow's end was silent once again. Her car reappeared on the old highway, door open, headlights on. The only thing on the seat was her camera. The footage ended abruptly after 5 minutes. But in those 5 minutes, investigators heard the faint sound of parade music and Mara's trembling voice whispering. They never stopped marching. Today, locals claim that every Halloween, Hallow's End returns for one night only. If you follow the old road past mile marker 13, you might see the lanterns glowing in the distance, hear the drums, the cheers, the candy hitting the pavement. But don't stop. Don't watch. Because once you witness the parade, you're part of it. Forever. And if you're ever driving through thick fog on Halloween night, and you see a sign that reads "Welcome to Hallow's," and keep going. Whatever you do, don't look back.